Preparing for a safe and productive experience. If you buy a new power tool or food processor, you will probably skip the safety information and go straight to the description of how to use your new appliance. We do need to spend time considering safety and stability, but this really is an important consideration in the context of childhood trauma. It's essential that people who experienced childhood harm are reasonably safe and stable before they start working at understanding and processing past issues. And even if they feel reasonably stable before starting this work, it's common to experience some challenges to stability along the way. Stretching and warming up your muscles before a workout can prevent injury. In the same way, being prepared to spot and respond to instability is the best means of protecting yourself if it occurs. Aside from stability simply being a good thing, there is another reason why it's important. Even with the support of therapy, about 20% of people drop out of the work they are doing. A common reason why people disengage from therapy or personal development work is because they begin to lose confidence in their stability in response to exploring their past experiences. You're much less likely to benefit from therapy or personal development programs if you drop out, and considering safety and stability at the outset increases the chances that you will make it right through to the end. Should you use the program as self-help or alongside therapy? We use the word self-help because it is the most common term to convey that you are using a resource without professional help. However, the word self-help has a solitary feel which we imagine conveys the wrong idea. Childhood trauma was interpersonal because it involved other people. Recovering from childhood trauma is also interpersonal because it requires other people. People you should feel reasonably safe with. For some, a therapist will be a necessary other person. Where therapy is not essential, individuals tend to require others they can trust to talk to about the work they are doing with the HTP guidebook. This person might be a friend, partner, family member, people in a face-to-face or online community support group, or others. Talking with others about the work you are doing with the guidebook is not always a popular idea among people who are harmed. Many have difficulties with trust, and some are fiercely self-reliant, or try to be. This helps to explain why childhood trauma is often kept a secret for many years. Below, we help you think about whether to do the program as self-help or alongside individual therapy. But whatever decision you make, it's important not to do the HTP in an isolated fashion. While it is possible to use the program as self-help, this is advisable for people who feel relatively stable, have support, and can already think about their past without becoming significantly distressed. If you are experiencing any of the following, we advise that you do not use this program as self-help. Instead, seeking help from a qualified therapist or mental health clinician will be advisable. Take what applies. Please pause the audio and complete exercise 1 in the guidebook entitled Circumstances Requiring Professional Support. If you need professional therapy before or while doing this program, you may want to speak to a family doctor or GP or other medical clinician for advice. Ask a therapist any questions you need to before you decide to work with them. Ensure they are properly registered or certified for the country you live in, have training and experience in working with childhood trauma, and seem trustworthy. If you feel you can use the guidebook as self-help or without therapy, we still advise that you have someone you can talk to about the work you are doing and how you are managing. This person or people should be someone you can trust, who will listen, keep what you say confidential, take you seriously, and care about how you are coping. Exercise 2. If using the HTP as self-help, indicate below who you can speak with while doing this program. Please pause the audio and complete exercise 2 in the guidebook. Suggestions on how to best use the guidebook. The guidebook has been rewritten many times in an attempt to include only what seems most essential to recovery. However, we appreciate that the guidebook can seem very big, and some might wonder if they can fit it into their lives. If the guidebook seems big, this reflects the fact that childhood trauma is normally experienced as a big problem. Our modern world is often about speed, and there is nothing necessarily wrong with that. If a 2-minute YouTube video can sort out your problem, that's great. But childhood trauma is a different sort of problem. Childhood trauma has deep roots and will not go willingly. This program is, therefore, designed to go at a fairly unhurried pace, and that's how we suggest you relate to it. Many people we work with cope by rushing like mad, as if being chased, or coming to a dead stop and collapsing. These are ways of coping with experiences of threat that are based in the nervous system, which we will look at later. You will be encouraged to work with the guidebook in a gentle but sustained manner, giving yourself time to integrate what you discover in the context of your lived experiences. The chapters are not that long. They range from 8 to about 20 pages. You might imagine you could read through the book in a few weeks. However, we strongly recommend you do not approach things this way for a couple of reasons. First, the ideas and exercises you encounter here will stir up memories, feelings, and thoughts. After reading and doing exercises, it's helpful to just get on with life and give yourself time to reflect on or integrate what you are encountering. Anna experienced childhood physical and emotional abuse, and she described her experience this way. Quote, I could relate to most of the ideas without much trouble, and so I often just wanted to go straight on to the next chapter. But I realized that I needed to slow down, because after finishing a chapter, I would keep thinking about what I read and seeing how these ideas related to my life and how I saw myself. End quote. You will encounter many important ideas while reading the guidebook, but this is a rather superficial form of learning. The most powerful way to understand these ideas is to see how they actually work in the context of your life and relationships. You will read about, for example, the impact of trauma on your body and nervous system, re-traumatization, and traumatic core beliefs. But you will get a much more powerful understanding of these ideas in relation to your lived experience. So the program requires reading and doing exercises, plus time to go and live your life. And some exercises are not done sitting at a table. They are done in response to life events, which can develop spontaneously. Doing a chapter over the course of a week is often a good pace for many, which means spending something like 5 or 6 months to work your way through the entire program. This might seem like a long time, but consider this. You have struggled with past events and related psychological problems for most of your life. What's another 5 or 6 months in the greater scheme of things? The guidebook only feels big or overwhelming if you imagine you have to do it in a few weeks. If you are using the guidebook while seeing a therapist, working with one chapter between each session can often create a useful rhythm, although it may be helpful for you and your therapist to work out together what the right pace may be. The guidebook is yours to use, develop, and keep for the rest of your life. You can underline, highlight, make notes in the page margins, do the exercises, draw pictures, etc. At the moment, this guidebook is identical to every other copy. When you finish, there will be a lot of you between these pages. The content of each chapter is designed to build on the chapters which came before it, so it's helpful to read the chapters in order. Certain earlier chapters offer opportunities for developing insight into the nature of childhood trauma. This work helps prepare you for later chapters, which focus more explicitly on remembering or processing historical trauma, and still later chapters which focus explicitly on recovery. Within this guidebook, you will encounter exercises encouraging you to reflect on your experience, past or present, and to express your thoughts and feelings. Many exercises offer an opportunity for writing. Some are checklists, and others are questionnaires. There is evidence that expressing yourself through writing can be helpful with respect to resolving past trauma and for general health. This makes sense. As we explore later, children who experience trauma often cope by not consciously absorbing what is happening to them. They split off or deny their own experiences. To survive, children often deny parts of who they are. Reflecting and exploring through writing can be a powerful way to integrate aspects of your experience and to get in touch with parts of you that had to be denied. However, exercises involving writing may feel intimidating for many who have had negative school experiences, have a learning difficulty such as dyslexia, or have problems with concentration. These issues are common for people who have experienced childhood harm. If you struggle in any of these ways, we have a few pieces of advice. 1. Don't worry about getting anything right or wrong, or failing. Only you have the correct answer because you are reflecting on your own experience. 2. Writing is not the only way to respond to these exercises. Some will find it more beneficial to make drawings, write poetry, paint, or use other art media. If the amount of space offered in the guidebook is not sufficient, use more paper and place this work in the book. 3. If there are certain words you just can't write because it feels too distressing, perhaps use initials or some code. If putting something down on paper still feels impossible, see if you can talk it through with someone you trust or your clinician if you are in therapy. 4. If it helps, there is a free audio version of the guidebook you can download from the HTP website or find on YouTube. See final section of book for further information. If you use the audio version, you will still require the guidebook to complete exercises. Some people using this program can feel unsure about how much of their work should be shared with others. Doing this program can give some people the confidence to talk more about what happened, and many have found it helpful to share the guidebook and work they are doing with others they trust. There is a truism which suggests that talking helps, and for many who experience childhood harm, there is evidence that this is accurate. If you can share your work in the guidebook with someone you trust, we suggest you do that. Some people we have worked with have had powerful and therapeutic experiences by reading the guidebook with someone they trust or sharing their guidebook work. Others may talk to someone they trust about their work, but they want privacy concerning the writing they are doing in the guidebook. You should feel in control, so do what's right for you. If the reading or an exercise elicits disturbing emotions or impulses, don't force yourself to do it. If you're in therapy, Tell your clinician what happened so they can give you more support. If you need to skip certain work, you may develop more confidence as you progress in the program, making it possible to circle back to certain sections or exercises you felt the need to avoid earlier. Creating the necessary time and space. You will need some protected time and space to focus on the reading and exercises. Below you have a chance to think about when and where you will read the guidebook. Consider when you are less likely to encounter interruptions, and see if there is a way to make that time pleasant. First thing in the morning with a hot drink can work well for many people, or later on works better for others. The only time we find it doesn't work well is right before bed. You're usually tired, and the work can sometimes stir up memories and feelings, affecting your sleep. Exercise 3. Time and space for reading the guidebook. Below, describe what you see as the best time and place for you to work with the guidebook. Please pause the audio and complete exercise 3 in the guidebook. Motivation, more complex than you might think. There was a quote from Charlie at the outset of the book, which we will repeat here. Quote, "I think there's a part of me that wants to deal with what happened and another part of me that tries to push it all away. Is that normal?" End quote. If by normal we mean common, then yes, Charlie's experience is very normal. Pretty much everyone we know who has approached this program has experienced mixed feelings. There is a part of them that wants to get to grips with their past experience, to spend time remembering and making sense of what happened and the way it impacted their development, to work at making changes in how they think and cope, and to hopefully feel better about themselves and life. One of the biggest motivating factors for some is that they are just so fed up living with the impact of their past experiences on their daily lives. However, there is also another part of people who experienced childhood harm that can resist or avoid doing this work, and there can be many genuine reasons for this. For example, learning about the effects of past trauma can be upsetting. Remembering what happened can feel worrying. Contemplating letting go of unhealthy ways of coping may not be something you want to do, and doing this work might affect your relationships in some way. Just thinking about your needs can be something many feel uncomfortable with. Sometimes the issue of motivation is looked at in quite a punitive way, as in, hey, that person just isn't motivated, suggesting laziness. But in the context of this program, it makes no sense to think of motivation in a punitive way. We need to consider it psychologically. In other words, it's understandable that a part of you wants to face this and a part of you wants to avoid it. For many, it isn't whether they do this program or use another model, it's about when they do it. Here's a question to consider. At this point in your life, is the part of you wanting to get to grips with your past and its impact on your life bigger than the part that doesn't want to deal with it? What is your gut response? If you want to go for it, that's great. If not, that's okay too. This program, or other models, will be here when you're ready. We knew one individual who left the guidebook on a bookshelf in her kitchen for almost a year. She told us she'd glance at it most days when making meals or doing the dishes, wondering when to start. So it took a while for her motivation to tip over and for her to get going. But when she did, she had a safe and helpful experience. Considering difficult life issues or distractions. The exercise below helps you consider your current stability and any distractions in your life. Have a look at the potential issues below that can interfere with security or stability, and tick any that currently apply to you. If you tick certain issues, this doesn't necessarily mean you can't or shouldn't do this program, but you may need to sort some things out first. Exercise 4. Identifying difficult issues or distractions. Please pause the audio and complete exercise 4 in the guidebook. We are not suggesting that your life needs to be completely sorted and that you should have perfect stability before you start this program. However, if you ticked any of the above issues or identified other significant issues not in the checklist, we suggest you consider two options. First, if a life challenge is worrying or distracting, it may be important to delay the program until you can sort it out or get through it. Second, perhaps you can start the program now, but you need the support of a qualified therapist to ensure you will have the stability and support to complete the work safely. Recognizing destabilization during the program. Virtually everyone who does personal development work or therapy concerning childhood trauma will encounter difficult feelings, thoughts, and memories. This program will ask you to fully appreciate how childhood experiences have impacted your well-being, sense of self, relationships, and life development. You will be looking at patterns by which you have coped as an adult and how childhood pain has continued in adulthood, something called re-traumatization. Later, you will be asked to recall and explore childhood experiences and memories, something you may have needed to push away to a greater or lesser extent. All of this is important for developing personal insight, understanding your needs better, and developing a life less constrained by the past. But it can be upsetting, and feelings like anger, anxiety, fear, and sadness are normal. Anytime we use the word normal, we mean common. Amanda was a biology and chemistry teacher who was physically and emotionally abused by a stepmother and neglected by her father. An intelligent individual with a scientific and analytical mind, she found the HTP work emotionally challenging and put it like this. Quote, "The guidebook can be upsetting, and at times I feel like I'm coming apart, but maybe that's how it works. Maybe you have to take something apart in order to understand it, and that allows you to put it back together in a new way, in a better way." End quote. We really liked Amanda's description because it captures the perils and opportunities of working with past trauma. The most common peril is probably destabilization, the sort of experience you can have when things are being pulled apart. So, what does destabilization mean? As you use this program, any difficult reactions you experience will hopefully be temporary and manageable. In other words, you will be able to largely manage these reactions and get back to your life when you need to. This is not what is meant by destabilization. Destabilization means experiencing feelings, thoughts, memories, or impulses that are distressing, difficult to put aside, and threatening to interfere with your ability to cope. We take the view that forewarned is forearmed. If you can spot destabilization, if it begins to happen, you will be more able to respond or get help. To support you in recognizing destabilization, we will describe below the four most common ways it occurs and the window of tolerance, another helpful way to explain destabilization. We will then provide ideas about how you might respond so you can reestablish the stability necessary for your continued recovery. 1. Emotional destabilization. It's common for people who experienced childhood harm to cope by pushing the past away. By engaging with this program, you will explore your past and its effect on your life. So you should not be surprised if things get emotional. Such emotional reactions will hopefully be manageable, and you can set them aside and get back to life when you need to. Emotional destabilization is occurring if you are experiencing powerful emotional reactions that feel overwhelming and which you are struggling to soothe or put aside. 2. Destabilization in coping. You can probably identify with the idea that at times you cope in healthier ways, but at other times you can be vulnerable to coping in ways which undermine your personal development. Everyone is different, but difficulties in coping might mean over-reliance on alcohol or drugs, an increase in obsessive-compulsive behaviors, difficulties with food, isolating yourself from others, etc. Any impulses concerning suicide, deliberate self-harming, or other risky behaviors are definite signs of destabilization concerning coping and should be taken seriously. If you encounter material in this guidebook that elicits painful feelings or memories leading to deterioration in your ability to cope, this is an expression of destabilization. Destabilization concerning intrusive memories or a flashback. Many parts of this guidebook can cause you to recall events from your childhood, and you will be specifically asked to recall memories when you get into the middle of the program. It's normal to experience some difficult memories while doing this work, but ideally, you can put them aside so you can get back to your life and relationships. The goal is remembering, not reliving. However, there is a possibility that exploring past events can cause you to experience painful, intrusive memories. While less common, it's possible that some could experience a flashback. The difference between an intrusive memory and a flashback is probably one of degree. An intrusive memory occurs if events from your past intrude into your consciousness in a distressing way that you are struggling to control or set aside. Intrusive memories can be distressing, but people can still largely stay connected to the reality around them. With a flashback, the images, emotions, and physical sensations are so powerful that someone can lose touch with reality, and it might seem like something bad is actually happening again. It's hard to know what is real. If you are struggling with painful, intrusive memories which feel hard to manage or have a flashback, these are signs of destabilization. 4. A shame response as destabilization. Shame is a complex and challenging issue for many people who have experienced childhood harm, which is why we will explore this area in depth in Chapter 15. However, we mention it here briefly because just thinking about your past or how you have coped can elicit a shame response, and we want you to be aware of this from the outset. By shame, we are talking about experiencing painful feelings of self-blame, badness, or a sense of inadequacy. Many people we work with can be self-punitive concerning past experiences and the problems they have, which makes them vulnerable to experiencing shame. Just reading this guidebook and recalling past experiences can trigger a shame response for some, which could be destabilizing. In the next section, we will offer a suggestion as to how you can manage if you experience shame in relation to your recovery work. The Window of Tolerance. Developed by Daniel Siegel, the window of tolerance is a further way to appreciate if you are losing stability. Humans can flip into states of fight, flight, or freeze when we encounter or imagine we encounter a threat. Fighting or fleeing is consistent with a state of hyperarousal, a reaction characterized by emotions such as fear or anger. Alternatively, we can also cope with threats through freezing. This is a state of hypoarousal, characterized by emotional numbing, shutting down, or becoming immobilized. Between hyperarousal, intense emotions, and hypoarousal, numb emotions, is the window of tolerance, a place where you are focused on the present and experiencing more moderate levels of emotion. Please read through Table 1 and see what you can identify with. Please pause the audio and review Table 1 in the guidebook. Why might those who experienced childhood trauma be more likely to flip into distressing states of hyperarousal or hypoarousal? One answer is that as children, they learned that hyperarousal or hypoarousal was an effective way of protecting themselves. A child may decide that being very alert and watching anxiously for any dangers, hyperarousal, will help them avoid harm. However, hyperarousal is more likely a means of coping if a child imagines that there is a way of escaping danger. If a child is overwhelmed by threat and believes that escape isn't possible, they can learn that shutting down emotionally or becoming numb, hypoarousal, is a good means of feeling less pain. So, people who experienced childhood harm often cope today through hyperarousal or hypoarousal simply because they learned to do it as a child. However, as you navigate this program and life situations, spending as much time as possible within the window of tolerance will be helpful. Being kicked out of the window of tolerance and into states of hyperarousal or hypoarousal can be seen as an expression of destabilization. If you can identify when you are being kicked out of the window of tolerance, this may help you respond in a way that helps you regain stability. Responding to destabilization. A state of destabilization can feel complex and is always specific to the context and the individual. So, there is no particular skill that is always appropriate or helpful in respect to regaining stabilization. Several skills to support stabilization are woven throughout the program. However, we thought it was important to offer certain skills at the front end of the guidebook, just in case you need them. Finding the right balance between exposing yourself to the work in the guidebook and retaining stability is important. In other words, you want to get close enough to memories and ideas to develop useful insight, but not so close that you get overwhelmed. Distraction or permission to avoid certain material. If there is a particular section of reading or an exercise you don't feel ready to do, that's okay. We have seen many people return to exercises later in their recovery when they feel ready, which is fine. If you sense that destabilization is occurring, you can also take a break and distract yourself. Leave it alone for a while and immerse yourself in life, relationships, or projects. You can then return to the work you are doing when you feel ready. Distraction or temporary avoidance, when necessary, can be a good response if you are destabilized by emotions, intrusive images, or struggling with coping. Grounding. Grounding can be useful if you struggle with disturbing memories, intrusive images, or emotions that threaten to overwhelm you. It can also be especially helpful if you are having a flashback. As mentioned, intrusive memories can be a feature of a flashback, but the images, the emotions, and the physical sensations are so powerful that a person can lose touch with reality, and it might seem like something bad is actually happening again. A grounding exercise is anything that can keep you connected to reality. If you are grounded, You are connected to the immediate world around you. You can feel yourself sitting in a chair, and you can hear and see what is happening around you. There are different grounding exercises, and we offer 3 below. One of these may have more appeal to you than the others. The first of these is called 5-4-3-2-1 grounding. When you need it, it works like this. Look around and name 5 things you can see. Now, focus your attention on 4 things you can feel. Next, name 3 things that you can hear around you. Next, focus attention on 2 things that you can smell around you right now. Lastly, find some food which is handy. Focus on what you can taste. The second grounding technique works as follows. You can focus strongly on the objects in your immediate surrounding. Say to yourself, I'm safe and I'm here in my... Then closely observe the objects around you and describe them. E.g., this is my kitchen. Those are our dinner plates. This is the table where we eat, etc. The third grounding technique works as follows. You can get back to reality by reminding yourself of who you are. Say things like, my name is, I'm X years old, I live at, the friends and family in my life are, etc. Keep listing everything about yourself and life which seems important. If you get to the end and everything still feels unreal, start going through the list again. Some find it helpful to write out the text of the grounding exercise and then keep this with them at all times. If they get triggered and begin to experience intrusive memories or a flashback, they can access the grounding exercise quickly and with greater confidence.